everybody. I'm going to try it this way. It's a vertical video. I don't know how that's going to work on YouTube because I have more than a few thoughts about this movie that I saw. I don't know how editing's going to work. I'm not locked down. Camera can move. All these things, we're going to figure it out. But I want to be a little more cash. I want to be a little more spontaneous with how I make these videos and not always just be sitting in my messy basement. So I could talk about The Book of Clarence, this very odd film that I saw, which I'm realizing is almost under the radar. I don't know if people have heard of The Book of Clarence, a movie that has been on just the periphery of my awareness, and so I think most people don't know about this movie. The Book of Clarence is I don't have a computer in front of me, so I have like a couple of names. I don't have like the robust research I usually have. I don't have that tonight. So this is a movie directed by James Samuel, and that will come into play in a moment. That'll mean something. I'll explain why that's meaningful. And it stars Lakeith Stanfield. And essentially, if you saw just the trailer for The Book of Clarence, you would think that this was like a spoof of Bible movies, but particularly a culturally black spoof of Bible movies. It's about a guy named Clarence, and from the trailer, it kind of looks like this is a guy who is like, it's almost like a Black Life of Brian. Like this guy gets mistaken for the Messiah or whatever. And that's sort of what it is, but it's also, it's surprisingly more, takes itself more seriously than that. This is a biblical period piece, and it's a complete pastiche of Bible movies. It's got the sweeping cinematography, it's got the titles that are right out of Ben-Hur or the Ten Commandments. But it also has an all-black main cast. It has a very anachronistic soundtrack and style. People say things like "let's go." They very modern vernacular, but they also talk very stiltedly sometimes. This is a movie that is all over the place. This movie's fascinating, and I'll just cut to the chase if you don't want to hear me ramble about it. It's worth seeing because it's an oddity and it's interesting. And if you have any interest in hip-hop culture or in the Bible or in movies that are weird, there's a lot here to chew on. Ultimately, I'm not sure what I think of this movie, but essentially Clarence is the twin brother of Thomas, who is one of the apostles of Jesus of Nazareth. And Thomas, known as the twin, but we don't really have information about the twin. So this is almost like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern for the Gospels. It's like, about Thomas's twin brother, and he's kind of a deadbeat, and he owes a scary guy money, and he has a bad reputation, and he's kind of a loser, and he's determined to prove himself. It's real weird. It's a really weird movie. And then he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe Jesus is who he says he is, and so he sets out to kind of cynically cash in on the whole Messiah craze, and he decides to present himself as a Messiah, and then he gets swept up in all these events that are remarkably similar to the events of the Gospels. And meanwhile, Jesus is a character kind of on the edges of this story, and we meet his apostles. And again, all these characters are played by very contemporary black actors who are not really playing for the period. So this, I could not, it was very hard for me to digest what was going on until I remembered where I've seen the director's name before. James Samuel directed a movie that was on Netflix a few years ago called The Harder They Fall. And this was a very anachronistically modern, stylish, hip-hop kind of a pastiche on Westerns. And so I realized, so I have a context for that movie, The Harder They Fall, being kind of taking the tropes of Westerns and then just having fun with an all-black cast and not worrying about style and not worrying about anachronism and just doing whatever you feel like doing. They're doing that now with Bible movies. That's what The Book of Clarence is. So I was so intrigued. My feelings on this are very all over the place. I apologize. I hope you find this somewhat interesting. But so a little known fact about me, perhaps here on this channel is that I have a degree, I have a master's degree from seminary in biblical literature, specifically Hebrew literature, but I've also studied the New Testament and the Gospels. So I have a kind of a strange relationship. Again, that's probably another weird series of videos that I may or may not ever make. I have a strange relationship with that material and with religion and all that. But this is definitely something that I have opinions about, that I have feelings about. And so when I see a movie that is a pastiche or a spin on biblical material, I'm always fascinated. A lot of Christians get very uppity when Aronofsky's Noah movie came out. You know, there was a lot of outrage and huffing and puffing, and he had to put a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie. My particular interest, and I have a podcast all about this, by the way, that you can still find out there, called Book, and where I go through the whole Bible, and I don't take religion out of it because it's inexorably a religious text, but I focus on the history and the context and the literary context of what the writings of the Bible are and what they meant to the people who wrote them and preserved them and transmitted them and all that stuff. So it's not pro-religion or anti-religion. It is just, this is what the Bible is. And then on top of that, there's all the, beliefs and stuff. So all that is to say, when a movie is a riff on the Bible, I'm at least intrigued. And then you put Lakeith Stanfield in it. It's directed by this interesting director. It's produced by Jay-Z. I wanted to see what it was gonna be about. And from the trailer, yeah, it looked goofy and weird, but the biggest question I had was, what is the perspective? What is this movie about? And I guess, unfortunately, once it clicked with me who the director was and what the movie really is, which is just a stylistic riff, it doesn't really have much to say. It does some interesting things. It does some interesting things with race dynamics. It casts like European whites, like British guys, basically as the Roman soldiers, and then all of the Judeans and Palestinians and basically the Jews in the story are all black actors and characters. That's interesting. Jesus is a black man. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on that they play with a subplot that I won't spoil about white Jesus, and there's a very famous actor who shows up in a sort of that role. So I'm not going to spoil a bunch of stuff, but so I really, really, really wanted this movie to have something to say, and it has little bits and pieces and parts that get close to saying. It has some very exhilarating moments and some very funny scenes, and it gets very close to being subversive, but in the end it doesn't really have that much to say. It just wanted to play with these tropes, and if that's what they wanted to do, they did it, and they made an interesting movie that was entertaining, and the theater crowd that I saw it with really had a good time. So if I have a real criticism of it, it's really one that I'm not qualified to make, because a black movie that uses the biblical material to riff and say something, which is a completely valid thing to do, by the way. It really bothers me when kind of stuffy white bread people want the Bible to only be interpreted the way that they read it. And this is ancient, weird material. Again, this is all the stuff that my podcast is about. But the Bible is like this strange artifacts from the past, and it's whatever else you believe about it and its inspiration, it is the creative work of people. So, and it's ancient. Any ancient document or story is going to have to be interpreted, and you get to do things. And so the people who kind of, control the religious narratives, they are very, very picky about how you portray this stuff. So I'm all for a movie being a strange, subversive take on the biblical material. But by doing what they do with inserting race into it, and again, it's theirs to do because it's classical cultural material. It's you could do Shakespeare, and you can cast it any way you like and set it any way you like. You do that with the Bible, it brings it to life, and it's great. My only issue is, and again, I'm not qualified to say this, so I'm going to very quickly say it and then run away from it. But you end up by taking the biblical material away from like white evangelicals and nationalists and giving it to a black cast and putting a hip hop soundtrack and doing things, very interesting things with the dynamics of the characters and interpreting some, you know, popular scenes, famous scenes from the Gospels. You're taking it away from that kind of that white bread interpretation, but you're also doing the same thing that they do, which is the Jewish erasure. You're taking the Jewishness of the stories away, which is what the kind of white European Western Christians do with that biblical material, by making all of the characters who are Jewish in the stories into black characters. You've just kind of done another version of the same kind of thing. And again, it's anybody can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying it occurred to me that, you know, having Hebrew letters written on signs in this movie and having the characters wearing temple garb and specifically Jewish things, when clearly the movie is not concerned with those issues. And the Jewishness of Jesus is one of those, the erasure of the Jewishness of Jesus is one of those huge problems in religion. Anyway, this silly movie, which has a lot of jokes about getting high and, like, you know, it's a very goofy movie. It's taken me into a very strange place of what I think about it and what to say about it. It's fascinating, and I'm glad that things like this get made. I'm glad that it was in a movie theater and I got to watch it. I have these complicated thoughts, and I think I might have forgotten some things to say, but I'm poking at things here that I've wanted to talk about in other contexts, and maybe I'll say more about them. Maybe I won't. Maybe it's not a good idea. I don't know. I don't know if this review is helpful. I don't know if I'm getting myself in trouble or if I'm just losing people, you know, with all this weird talk. But this movie was really a very interesting kind of convergence of weird interests of mine. And I had a good time watching it. I wish that it was a little more, I wish that if it was going to be subversive, it's very subversive in its presentation and in its setup and its premise. And then it just kind of ends up delivering a very, by the end, I would almost call it trite. And I wish it had more to say, but I'm glad it exists. And this director is very interesting, and James Samuel. I look forward to seeing what else is going to come from this artist. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I shot it like this, and I don't know why I said some of the things I told myself I wasn't going to say in the video. But that's my review of the Book of Clarence. January is weird, man. January is where the byword of January is usually that it's where the crappy movies land, because it's as far away from award season qualification as it can be. But in this case, this isn't a bad movie. I think this is a movie that the studio didn't know what to do with, so that's why it's here in January. And that's a shame, because it's interesting. And but people are finding it. There was a crowd when I saw it, and they were lively and they were into it. There was an old white couple sitting in front of me who left 3 minutes in. And it's not a vulgar movie. It's PG-13, you know, it's just the vibe. They could tell immediately that this is not for them. And they left, and, you know, that's fine. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back with more reviews and shorts and good time, fun stuff soon. This is Josh, going to bed. Bye.